Hi, I'm here to talk about why film continuity is overrated. I do think a little bit of continuity can be fun. A few little references to a previous film or a previous version of a franchise can be great. But focusing too much on continuity has really brought down a lot of films. And it's particularly brought down a lot of films in a shared universe where I feel like a lot of the focus isn't on the individual films. It feels like a lot of the focus is on making sure things line up with a previous film and that things are set up for another film, and then that film sets up another thing, and then they have continuity that sets up this, and then all these little details. It's too much. There was a time where there were films that were in a franchise, but they felt like their own separate thing, where there was very little continuity, where you could watch the films in pretty much any order, and there might be a few things that you would miss, but nothing too big. For example, there were the Batman films. Tim Burton directed two Batman films, and the 1989 Batman film wasn't uh, setting up Penguin and Catwoman, and Batman Returns wasn't talking about a bunch of continuity stuff with the Joker and stuff like that. There were a few mentions of Vicky Vale, and other than that, it feels like Batman and Batman Returns could be watched in basically any order. It felt like that was okay, and then they moved on with Joel Schumacher, and it was still the same sort of uh, universe thing with some of the same actors, but a new Batman and a new tone. Um, and that was okay. I do like the Tim Burton Batman films more than the Joel Schumacher films, but I like that Batman Forever isn't so concerned with lining up with the continuity of what came before. It's its own separate fun thing. And then Batman and Robin was its own separate fun thing that had very little continuity with Batman Forever. And I think that's fun. And to be fair, when it comes to the Chris Reeve Superman films, there is a scene in the first Superman film setting up Zod, Non, and Ursa. So there's one scene of that film that's there for world building, the continuity, setting stuff up for another film. But I feel like that's it. It feels like Superman 1, 2, 3, and 4 feel like their own separate things, and they feel like their own fun adventures, where it doesn't feel like different parts of the same story with a bunch of continuity stuff that can take over, and world building getting in the way of just individual fun stories. And I feel like the Marvel Cinematic Universe really hurt a lot of films, where a lot of films now are part of shared universes, focusing on continuity, focusing on one film building up to another film, building up to another film, building up to a spin-off series, and a spin-off series has continuity with that. It feels like it's more about lining things up with other films and shows than it is about an individual film. And a film is a big thing, something put into theaters, millions of dollars spent on it, a huge event. But instead of being treated like a huge event, it feels like it's being treated like another chapter of another story that's building up to another chapter of another story. And it feels like there's not that focus on great individual stories. It feels like there's so much work focusing on building up to Avengers, and then building up to another Avengers film, and then building up to spin-off shows, and the spin-off shows building up to the films. It feels like it just gets way too much. It feels like there's way too much focus on continuity, and that can be frustrating because I feel like a lot of viewers want to be able to turn on a film, enjoy it, and then move on with their day. Not have to be like, oh, well, this is building up to this other thing. Should I see this other thing before this? And then, oh, well, I just finished this film, but I don't want to think about it. I just want to think about the next film. It feels like there's not much time to process. one film out of a franchise. Instead, the focus seems to be on, well, what's going to happen in the sequel, and then when the sequel comes out, what's going to happen in the third film, then what's going to happen in the team up film, what's going to happen in the spin off show, and what's the spin off show going to do for the next film. It just feels like there's more focus on shared universe film stuff all trying to line up in a particular continuity. Because there's so much focus on everything fitting into a continuity, it leads to a lot of films that feel like they don't have their own individual identity, where uh, Tim Burton's two Batman films feel incredibly different from each other, despite same director, same actor playing Batman. A lot of films in the a lot of films in the Marvel Cinematic Universe uh, feel similar, not the exact same, but a similar tone, a similar style, because they're trying to line up with previous films. And I feel like the focus shouldn't be on making Thor fitting with Captain America, making Captain America fitting with Iron Man, and fitting in with Hulk, fitting in with Ant Man, fitting in with Captain Marvel, fitting in with Spider Man, all that stuff. I feel like it should be about making the best possible film. And I feel like when you're trying to have something fit in the continuity of five other films, a couple shows, and potential other films that may or may not even happen, it feels like there's less focus on making a great individual film. It feels like something as uniquely stylish and one of a kind as Tim Burton's Batman, or just something that you don't need to focus the most on. You can just enjoy the ride, like Joel Schumacher's Batman films. That doesn't feel like a thing either. It feels like even the films of the Marvel Cinematic Universe that are more comedic still feels like, well, they're part of the shared universe, a bunch of references to other things, a bunch of continuity with other things. It feels like the fun, uniqueness, and just simple fun has gone away. And I feel like that's why I love a lot of the old superhero films and a lot of the Marvel Cinematic Universe stuff, a lot of other shared universe stuff. It just feels overwhelming. It feels like it's more about the continuity and the overall franchise rather than great individual films. So I feel like there's been way too much focus on continuity. It's been way too big of a thing. I love the Fox X-Men films, if you count the spin-off films, all that stuff. The continuity of that doesn't line up with each other. But the films are really good. For example, Sebastian Shaw has a little appearance on a TV screen in X2, and then he shows up in First Class as the main villain of that film, and that uh, doesn't line up because X2 takes place afterwards, and Sebastian Shaw gets defeated by Magneto in First Class. But was it worth it? I think it was, because I feel like if it was the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I feel like there'd be an attempt to not have Sebastian Shaw replace him with another villain. And could you imagine the main villain of a film being changed just to line up with the continuity of a single little background reference of a scene, or not have Bolivar Trask be a major character in X-Men Days of Future Past just because a character that has the last name Trask was in X-Men The Last Stand? I feel like the X-Men films were more focused on great individual films rather than the continuity, and because of that, it led to some of the best Marvel films, in my opinion, that are either more interesting story wise, like X2 or X Men Days of Future Past, or just more fun, like a lot of the other X Men films. Something like The Last Stand has story issues. I don't like what it does with Cyclops, but it's a simple, fun action film I really enjoy. And it does even have some thoughtful stuff in terms of the story as well. It feels like it's not obsessed with continuity. So I feel like continuity is what's really bringing down films, and I feel like it needs to be toned down.